Good morning and welcome back to Science Club Live. We hope you had an absolutely wonderful Easter. Really great to have you. And today we're looking forward to doing a coral food chain mobile review. So this lesson is called How is Reef Life Connected? And it's all about how all the different things on the reef join together in feeding relationships. Now, before we start, just a few things. So we have very big welcome to everyone who is enjoying Science Club Live. And we've got people tuning in from the UK, Australia, France, India, Finland. I think there's a first Finnish group that we've had. So welcome everyone in Finland, Germany, the USA, Spain, and Bermuda. So welcome one and all. We've got a few shout outs to give. We've got a good morning to S3 biology students from Culloden Academy, and hope you had a good Easter holiday, and that's from Miss H. So hi to everybody from Culloden Academy, and really do hope you've had a wonderful Easter break, long weekend. We've got Annabella and Taran. Good morning, all. A shout out to Lily Rose Robinson in Hackney, London. Hi, hi there. Oscar from Anglesey, who really loves Encounter EDU. We love having you on Encounter Live. Oscar, it's wonderful to have you. We've got Camille from London, Mia and Lyra in West Sussex. We have Finn, age 7 in Leicestershire. So good morning, Finn. Great to have you. I think it's your first live lesson, so welcome. Great to have you. And just checking the live chat, and we've got Ernie on as well. Great to have you with us. Now, for those of you who haven't done a live lesson before, the basic format is for these ones, for Science Club Live, is that we put up a live lesson, we connect it to one of the activities that we have on Encounter EDU. You have a go at the activity, see how you get on, and then we come on and we go through it, and then we have a Q&A chat. So there's some questions that have been pre-submitted, and you can do that up to 24 hours before the live lesson starts. And there's also a chance to use the live chat. So do look at the live chat and see how you can get involved in that. If you are going to use the live chat, remember it's YouTube, so it's an adult who are asking to use their YouTube channel account, Google account, and do remember that it is like a sort of classroom or a science club. So try and keep those comments and questions on topic. So try not to drift off and have a chat about other things. But really, it's great to have you. So we're going to do those two things. So hopefully you had a good chance to have a look at those the Coral Food Chain mobile. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the living things that were on that, go over what a food chain is, and then we'll have a go also at looking at a few sort of ways of how did you get it right, what can we improve, that kind of thing. So I've just got just make sure I've got the the presentation lined up to show you. Brilliant. And I think I saw some comments here saying, if you made a food chain mobile, how do you get it to show us and to share it? The best way of doing that is to get a parent or carer to upload a photograph of it to Twitter, and we are at Encounter EDU. If you're not on Twitter, then you can email it to us and we'll put it up and email you when it's being shown. Our email address is info@encounteredu.com. So without further ado, let's see how we're getting on. There we are. So coming through this, we're remembering where we are. We're looking at the coral reef. We're looking at this amazing ecosystem. and also we're looking at the science, and we're moving on from the coral itself. And there's a question I saw earlier, sort of how do coral reefs form? Just remember that they're formed by, basically they're formed by an animal, the coral polyp, related to a jellyfish and an anemone, and they take minerals from the water and they build this amazing structure. And over the past week, last week, we're looking all about the coral reef. And this week, we're looking today at how life is connected. And then tomorrow, about how life is adapted. And then on Thursday, our last session is a look at some of the threats to the coral reef. Oops, sorry. I've just skipped over some of the terms that we use. So I know it's a science club and it's not school, but just to go over a few of the terms that we have on when we're doing food chains. So we've got, I'll just take it from the top. So we have carnivore. So you all know what a carnivore is. That's an animal that eats another animal. Consumer. We all know what a consumer is. That is an animal that gets its, or living thing that gets its energy from eating. It can be eating a plant, or it can be eating another animal. Herbivore, that key term which you know is a living thing that eats a plant. Producer is a living thing that gets its energy from the sun. There are some secret producers in the deep ocean that get their energy from other things, but that's a whole other topic of conversation. We have predator. That is the name we give for an animal that eats another animal, and prey is the animal that gets eaten. And then lastly, we have these two other terms. We've got food chain and food web. Food chain is really sort of when you are at primary or elementary school, this is a sort of level of complexity or difficulty that we use to describe the feeding relationships. And we're going to come on to some of those in a bit. And then when you get into secondary school, middle school, high school, a food web is more accurate about what happens in nature. And it's like a spider's web because there's all these links between all the different animals and plants and other living things in an ecosystem and how they're all related. But we're just going to do food chains for today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the different living things that we had that we're trying to link. Then we're going to build some basic food chains. And then the last thing is we're going to have a look at what the food chain mobile could or should have been like. So we're going to get going now. So, oh no, we've got a secret Nemo in here. Nemo snuck in. Nemo wasn't supposed to be part of this, but we'll look at adaptations and Nemo tomorrow. Snuck in there. First of all, we're going to look at some of our producers. So these are the living things that get their energy from the sun using a process called photosynthesis. Now, this is a microscopic picture of tiny wee algae, so plant-like living thing, and it's called phytoplankton. So you can think of that as it may appear sort of bluey, greeny, whatever in the ocean. That is those tiny plant-like organisms, bottom of the food chain, and they get their energy from the sun. We also have, just like on land, we have meadows. Under the ocean, we also have meadows of seagrass. We also have forests, but those aren't that connected to the coral reef. We have kelp forests. So a lot of the things that we have on land, we have the equivalents underwater too. So we have seagrass, another producer. Coming on to some of the consumers, this is a copepod. And a copepod is a type of zooplankton, so a tiny wee creature that feeds on algae, on the phytoplankton. So we have this is therefore a consumer and a herbivore. It's a consumer because it gets its energy from eating, and it's a herbivore because it likes to eat plants or algae. We have another herbivore, another consumer. So we have the green turtle. So we'll find out a little bit about what that might eat in a bit. We have coral. Now, coral is very confusing. And we went over this last week because coral gets its energy in two ways. It gets it from tiny algae inside its tissue. And so that is tiny algae that gets its energy from the sunlight and starts to parrot. But in actual truth, it's really a consumer. So we've got this half producer consumer, but it's also getting its food using its tentacles, and that is from those tiny copepod. Oop, gave it away. Tiny creatures in the ocean. The crown of thorn starfish is a sort of top view, the vicious coral predator going across the coral reef. So this is a picture of a consumer because it eats something, and a carnivore because it's eating poor little coral polyps. Then we have Tritons Trumpet. I got a bit confused last live lesson when I called this one of the most venomous animals on the reef. In fact, that's another type of marine snail, a cone snail. I just misremembered having gone around a lab at James Cook University many years ago. So cone snails, the really venomous ones. Tritons Trumpet, though, one of the few predators for the crown of thorn starfish. And when we say predator, that means it's eating another animal, so it's also a consumer and a carnivore. Parrotfish, kind of an omnivore. An omnivore isn't one that I put in there, but an omnivore is a type of animal that eats both plants and other animals. So a lot of humans are omnivores. A lot of people now are vegetarian, which means they're herbivores. But traditionally we are omnivores, eating sort of a range of different things around. Parrotfish, we'll come on to what that might consume as a consumer in just a bit. We have the wonderful manta ray, and although we're doing adaptations next lesson, I'm just going to show you that wonderful filter-like mouth as it goes through the ocean, like a big sieve, getting tiny little things for its food. Another example of a consumer. And then at the top of the, or actually at the sort of end of the food chain, we have the tiger shark. And because it's right at the top of all the living things that are providing energy, we call it the apex predator, right at the top there. So this tiger shark being an apex predator. So what we're going to do now is we're going to think about how all these different things can be connected. So you can see this arrow down here, and this arrow is looking at how the energy flows from one living thing to another. And so what you are challenged to do in making a food chain is to look at, probably at the beginning, so the first question mark, you're looking at what kind of living thing starts a food chain, then what eats that, and then what eats that. And the arrow doesn't point in the direction of the eating, it points in the direction of how the energy goes. So here's an example. We've got a coral, and that's getting its energy from either the sunlight and the zooxanthellae in its tissue, or using its tentacles to catch wee creatures. The parrotfish is then munching on that coral, and then we've got the tiger shark eating the parrotfish. So the direction of the energy goes from the coral to the parrotfish to the tiger shark. Here's another one. This is a cool one. So we've got the tiny algae in the ocean right at the end. And then we have, they're getting their energy from the sun, so they're a producer. Then we have the copepod, which is a tiny sort of type of plankton, and that's a consumer consuming the algae. And then in turn, we've got the manta ray eating the copepod. So that is another type of consumer. So in this relationship between the copepod and the manta ray, we have the copepod is the prey because it's being eaten, and the manta ray is a predator because it's eating the other animal. We've got herbivores and carnivores here. We've got the manta ray as a carnivore. We've got the copepod as a herbivore. Now, I'm just going to see on the next slide, we've got what your coral food chain mobile should have looked like. And here we go. So at the beginning of all our food chains and food webs, we should really have the sun, because we're a solar powered planet. And that sun, as you can see, is providing the energy to producers. There are 3 types of living thing on our food chain mobile that is getting the energy from the sun, they're producing energy from the sun. So we have the phytoplankton or algae on the left-hand side, we've got seagrass in the middle, and then we've got the coral on the right-hand side. Just to go to the left, was our last food chain. We've got algae to copepod to manta ray, and then in the middle, we've got sun to seagrass to the green turtle enjoying eating the seagrass there. And then over on the right-hand side, we can see we've got 2 food chains coming down from the coral. We've got one, which is the crown of thorns starfish eating the coral, getting its energy from the sun, but also from copepods. That's why we need a food web to draw lots of lines on these things. But let's keep it simple. Coral to the crown of thorns starfish, and then to the Tritons trumpet, and then coral to the parrotfish to the tiger shark. Now, I wonder how you got on with that. So there's some really sort of quite a lot of science language in there, quite a lot of knowledge about the coral reef and the different living things on it, but really hope that you've got a beautiful coral food chain mobile now decorating your home. So without further ado, we'll come on to some of the live chat here. Also seeing that we've got Rocky on board, we've got Martha, we've got Winston. Hi, Martha, Rocky, and Winston. Great to have you on board. So we're going to come on to some of these live chat. I'm going to have to, there's so many through here, I'm going to have to sort of rewind a bit. We have from Oscar, stop and the presentation as well. There we go. So from Oscar, we have what are the most common symbiotic animals on the reef? Now, symbiosis is a relationship between 2 animals where they're living together. It's just that's really what it means. There's a relationship there, and probably the most common symbiosis on the reef is that between the coral polyp, the animal, and the zooxanthellae, the algae that lives inside its tissue that gives it so much of its energy. Great question. Finn, I think we just covered briefly your question about how coral reefs form. There's a lot more on that, and it's a cool thing to do with volcanoes. So we can have a look online, or we can come back at the end if we have time. Right, wow. We have Efi here, who's age 4, amazing, who's made her own coral mobile, absolutely fantastic. And we have Samuel from London joining us as well. We have the Hampshire Home Truths at the Bananas. Welcome, Bananas, one and all. And where are we? Come down. Here we have from Rosetta Robinson. Do some predators eat producers as well as their prey? Yes, certainly. There are some predators that eat producers, so the herbivores, and they eat prey as well. And an example of that, so that's really they're saying that omnivores. Examples of that can be young turtles that eat a range of different types of animal. We also have the parrotfish, which was part of our food chain. Now, the parrotfish is eating algae, so it's eating a producer, as well as being a predator, so it's eating the coral polyp as well. So certainly you do get animals that eat producers. I mean, a lot of humans do that as well. So they're predators in insofar as they eat other animals, and they eat producers, so they eat vegetables as well. From Rob, we have how do boulder corals get their energy, especially the brain coral? That's a really good question. So we'll go back to sort of last week when we looked at the coral polyp a lot. So the coral polyp is related to a jellyfish, which is like this, and it's stuck to the bottom of the ocean, and it makes these amazing shapes. Now, if it's shallow coral, like you can see around here, then we can see there's enough sunlight coming down, and they've got this coral polyp's got a really cool relationship between an algae that lives inside its tissue, the zooxanthellae, and they get energy from the sun, share that sugar with the animal. And so most shallow reef growing corals, like this brain coral down here, that is going to get about 70 to 90% of its energy from tiny algae living inside its tissue that make it this sort of mustard green color. But it also, during the night, it will sort of come out with its tentacles and will try to catch small creatures that are in the water, which we call zooplankton, a type of plankton. Is there anything that eats turtles? I think that's from Martha. Certainly, so we have evidence of some of the sharks eating turtles, but one of the big problems I think facing turtles at the moment is getting trapped in human pollution, and also one of the problems that we're seeing is that when turtle hatchlings hatch, they can get caught on the beach, and when they're young, they can get got. But also, a lot of their beaches are being turned over into developments. So those are some of the things harming turtles. Is there do tiger sharks eat sea turtles? I think they do. I have to check on that. They do eat so many different things. They found car number plates inside a tiger shark. Lockdown, meltdown. We have what is the most common animal at the top of the food chain? So humans are normally top of most food chains, if you think about it. But really, the apex predators on the reef, mostly sharks, are some of the top predators. And then certainly in some places that I have been, so we're looking at East Timor, just to the north of Australia, where a lot of the sharks have been fished out. Then you get the saltwater crocodile as the apex predator there. Do corals eat each other? That's from money. They certainly attack each other. There's a vicious warfare on the vicious warfare, especially at night on the reef. Some great it's a really great video footage, I think, online somewhere. Quickly getting through, Efi asks, what is the fiercest form of fish on the reef? It's a really interesting one. I mean, I sort of have this question quite a lot. People often think it's the shark that is the fiercest fish on the reef. And I would say, in fact, if you're a scientist working on the reef, maybe in the Pacific Ocean, perhaps it's not the shark, it's the clownfish, Nemo. They're very territorial, and if you get too close to their enemy, they'll come and just go for you. They'll really sort of attack your dive mask and those other things. So I think sharks get a really bad reputation for being fierce. I'd go the vicious Nemo, vicious clownfish as one of the fiercest fish there. How does seagrass grow? Much like grass on land. That's from Samuel. And we have we've got more questions here. What do giant squid eat? I am not entirely sure. I do think they eat other squid, but my deep sea food webs have escaped me. We do have a deep sea food web game online, so perhaps you can refresh my memory and have a go at that. So please do look. I'm just going back there from Rocky. Is there anything that eats the snail that eats the crown of thorns starfish? I cannot remember exactly, but in terms of things that eat shellfish, you're going to get anything that goes that can break open that hard shell and avoid getting hit, getting done by it. So I'm thinking here we're going to have with a hard sort of be able to smash things up. They are quite big, the Tritons Trumpet. What are we going to have? That's actually got me. I'm going to have to rely on, but I mean, most things get eaten on the reef, but something that goes for a Triton's Trumpet, huge, great sea snail. I'm going to have to come back to you on that, Rocky. That's a really great question. You stumped me there. Lily Rose, are there undiscovered predators? Yes, there are. There's huge amounts of different animals yet to be discovered. The shallow coral reef isn't quite well studied, but I did ask Dr. Lucy Woodall, who's a chief scientist of our partner Nectons, who are deep sea submersible exploration organization, would we find a dinosaur down in the depths? And she said probably not, because dinosaurs are reptiles and they need to come to the surface for air to breathe. But there might be a huge shark down there that we haven't discovered yet. How do jellyfish fit into the food chain? That's from the Bananas. That's a really great question. So jellyfish will be, some of them, confusingly, have the zooxanthellae inside their tissue. So they also get energy from the sun into algae inside their tissue, and then that gives them some food. But also they are a carnivore, so they'll be going along using their tentacles and their stinging cells and their tentacles to catch a range of different prey. So depending on the size and type of the jellyfish will fit into the food chain there. In terms of then that being eaten, we do have turtles, types of turtles that eat jellyfish. So be nice to turtles and they'll start to eat more jellyfish. So they consume a range of different types of life in the ocean using their stinging cells. They also get energy from, some species get energy from the sun and then being eaten by turtles. So that's how they fit into the food chain. Finn, age I think 7, would like to know, do you get cold water reefs? Finn, it's a really great question. So this sort of science club has been focusing on what we call tropical shallow reefs, and that's a typical reef that you see behind me. They are found in the Indian Ocean, Red Sea, Great Barrier Reef, Pacific, Caribbean, those types of places. Typically between nice warm water, between 23, 28 degrees Celsius, typically quite shallow, between about sort of 1-2 meters all the way down to about 30-40 meters. But that isn't all the coral that you have. You do have cold water coral. The famous cold water reefs of the UK where we're based. That's the Mingulay Reef, and that's in the Outer Hebrides. You do get coral thousands of meters deep. I think down to sort of 6,000 meters. Thousands of year old. There's old corals down there. So you do get a range of different types of coral. But when we talk about sort of coral reef this amazing sort of ecosystem that covers a tiny fraction of the world's ocean, but supports a quarter of all marine life, then we get you were talking about sort of warm water corals, so sort of 27, 28 degrees for most of them. So from Ernie in the gallery, great white sharks were in the gallery. How do they fit into this whole thing? Not particularly well. Typically your great white is going to prefer slightly cooler water. I think we put it in there because we wanted, just to share, because they're cool, amazing creatures, huge predator. You'll mainly find them eating sort of seals. That is a favorite prey. And so that you would want that's why you get quite a few great white shark attacks on surfers, because it confuses from below. Someone sort of swimming on a surfboard can look like a sort of seal in distress from below. So Lily Rose would like to know, are sharks dangerous for corals? No, they're super, super, super important for coral reefs. They keep the whole ecosystem in nice balance. So lots of sharks are cool for coral reefs. Do you know, is there a video of the warfare which takes place on the reef? That's from Winston. Yes, there is. I think it's from the Blue Planet, and we'll try and search out and put it on Twitter, the clip of where the coral warfare happening on the reef. I think it's from the Coral Reefs episode as part of Blue Planet 2. Some amazing footage grabbed by the team there. Lifespan of coral. Great loss. I think we're going to have to very soon running out now. Lifespan of coral all the way from about 10 years for some of the shorter lived corals on the shallow reef, all the way to over 4,000 years for some of the deep cold water corals down there. Thank you. There's so many great questions, stumped by some of your amazing questions. Especially I should know more about Tritons Trumpet and the predators of large marine snails, obviously. But great to have you all on board. Thank you so much for being part of Science Club Live. Thank you so much to everybody who's contributed to supporting Science Club Live and future lessons. There is a ability to buy us a virtual cup of coffee, and that helps support this voluntary work that we're doing during this time of homeschooling and trying to get you as much sort of science knowledge and fun activities as we can. Just looking forward, we have adaptation on the reef tomorrow. We have coral threats. Then we are back the week after. We're teamed up with the Field Studies Council. We've got 2 weeks of wonderful lessons with them. On Earth Day, we've got a very special collaboration with The Last Animals for our older students. The documentary is rated 12, but we've got on Earth Day, 22nd of April, 2 great panel discussions about the illegal wildlife trade and what can be done about it. So that should be absolutely fascinating. But thank you so much for being part of this Science Club Live, and do come back tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.